What India's trade agreements with the United Arab Emirates and Australia imply for micro, small, and medium enterprises exports. Due to a variety of causes, India has recently shifted into a high gear in order to fuel its aim of becoming an export powerhouse, racing past China. With nearly half of its exports coming from the MSME sector, India has refocused on free trade agreements, commencing with an agreement with Mauritius in 2021. After years of being dissatisfied by the outcomes of past trade treaties. What new free trade agreements mean for MSME? In February last year, India signed two ambitious agreements, a Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, that is CEPA, with one of its top export destinations, the UAE, and a recent Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, that is ECTA, with Australia to reduce or eliminate trade barriers, particularly import tariffs for MSMEs and other businesses. Similar agreements are being negotiated with the United Kingdom, the European Union, Canada, Israel, and Gulf Cooperation Council. The Gulf Cooperation Council is basically a political and economic coalition of 6 Middle Eastern countries. They are Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Oman, Qatar, and United Arab Emirates. Free trade agreements with Australia and the UAE are significant milestones in India's new global trade orientation, since both countries are key export markets for the country. According to the financial year 22 economic survey, the UAE was India's second largest export market behind the United States in fiscal year 2021-22, with China ranking third. India's yearly export to the UAE are estimated to be approximately $26 billion. Exports to Australia, on the other hand, increased by 20% to $4.7 billion between April and October, making Australia India's 10th largest trade partner during the time. The two free trade agreements are significant since they are among the first in the post-COVID era. Furthermore, with India improving its ease of doing business scenario over the years with multiple business reforms for exporters, as well as its focus on integrating itself in the global supply chain amid supply chain disruption, the need for self-reliance, and the need to overcome trade imbalance, it is the right time for the country to sign trade deals with promising trade partners. Australia and UAE play important roles in global economies, thus cooperation with them is essential. India's climb to the world's fifth largest economy in September last year, along with China's economic slump. India's vaccination diplomacy and other factors have aided India's ability to forge trade accords with global countries. Geopolitically, India is well positioned and the world recognizes India. So, with the world trusting India, the time has come for new free trade agreements. According to the trade agreement, India's exports for labor-intensive sectors such as engineering, textiles and apparel, gems and jewelry, leather and footwear, furniture, select pharmaceutical products and medical devices and so on, which have a significant presence of small businesses, have zero duty access to all tariff lines from India. A tariff line is an item or a commodity that is mentioned in a nation's tariff schedule, which is a complete list of products with appropriate duty rates that must be paid when the item enters or leaves the country. Previously, Australia imposed import duties of 4 to 5% on certain items in comparison to countries with which Australia has free trade agreements such as China, Thailand, Vietnam, South Korea, Indonesia, Malaysia and Japan. In 3 years, India's gems and jewelry export to Australia is predicted to increase from $350 million to $800 million. According to the trade agreement, the abolition of duty would likely lead to an increase in jewelry exports, which would otherwise face a 5% tariff effect in Australia. The ECTA forecasts the immediate duty-free access will create roughly 8 lakh jobs in India and $10 billion in new exports from India to Australia over the following 5 years. In terms of merchandise imports from Australia, raw materials, minerals and intermediate products dominate. Other than tanning, dyeing extracts and pigments, 74% of it is coal and 71% of it is cooking coal, which will help India MSMEs and others in sectors such as steel, aluminium, garments and so on become competitive in manufacturing, with 90% of imports from Australia receiving zero duty access to the Indian market. For the uninitiated, India has offered tariff concession on products such as cooking coal and thermal coal, wines, agriculture products such as cotton, almonds, shells and in shell, oranges and so on. Metals such as aluminium, copper, nickel, iron and steel, and minerals such as manganese, ore and calcinized alumina. Another significant benefit offered by the ECTA has been the Double Taxation Avoidance Agreement, that is DTAA, and the DTAA is essentially a tax treaty that India has with over 80 nations so that taxpayers or businesses do not have to pay double taxes on their income from both the source countries. While India has a DTAA with Australia as well, ECTA claims that a provision in the DTAA was exploited to tax Indian companies' offshore income in Australia, notably IT firms. In a statement earlier this month, the Commerce Ministry also stated that Australia has no domestic framework for improving tax on royalties, fees and charges by enterprises, providing these remittances to parent corporations. This resulted in disparity in taxation which irritated Indian businesses and MSMEs alike. However, with the implementation of ECTA, Australia has changed its tax legislation, eradicating this disparity. The deal would also abolish double taxation on IT services from April 1, 2023, which was making us less competitive and making us less profitable in the IT business. In terms of CEPA with the UAE, the agreement was the first full FTA negotiated by India with any nation in the last decade, covering practically all of India's 11,908 tariff lines and the UAE's 7,581 tariff lines. The deal boosts India's export to the UAE by eliminating 5% import charge on 97% of its tariff lines, which equate to 99% of Indian imports. Apart from automobiles, the UAE's zero duty market access covers all labor intensive sectors, the majority of which are MSME dominated, such as gems and jewelry, textiles, leather, footwear, sports goods, plastic, furniture, agriculture and wood products, engineering products and medical devices. The UAE serves as a gateway to all of Africa as well as several other Gulf nations and Europe. It also boasts a substantial Indian diaspora and a large market for labor-intensive items such as textiles, gems and jewelry, leather, footwear, etc. Impact. According to the Commerce Ministry, the CEPA is already having a substantial beneficial impact on India and UAE trade, with exports to the UAE excluding petroleum goods increasing by 14% to $5.92 billion between June and August 2022 from $5.17 billion between June and August 2021. During this time, diamonds and jewelry, electrical gear and equipment, cereals, nuclear reactors and boilers, sugar and sugar confectionery, inorganic chemicals and so on dominated exports. In contrast, India's imports from the UAE excluding petroleum related imports increased by 1% to $5.61 billion over the 3 months period, up from $5.56 billion the previous year. Overall, the UAE's biggest imports include petroleum and petroleum products, precious metals, stones, gems and jewelry, minerals, chemical, wood and wood products. New approach. The rush of trade treaties with the UAE, Australia and other nations reflect India's shift towards fair and equitable agreements that benefit both India and partner countries. Mr. Piyush Goyal said,
So therefore we decided that we must talk to like-minded countries, particularly countries which have a rules-based trading order, which are transparent in their economic systems as India is, and enter into arrangements which are a win-win for both sides, which are fair, equitable and balanced.